Marcus Chen stared at the empty barn where his father's $400,000 worth of farm equipment had vanished overnight. The HOA president's smirk still burned in his memory. Millions of consequences, son. But what Richard Hawthorne didn't know was that Marcus had planted something among those machines. Something that would turn a simple theft into the most spectacular downfall ever broadcast on live television. The trap was set. The bait was taken. And in 72 hours, Channel 7 News would make Richard Hawthorne the most hated man in 3 counties. The first drops of rain hit Marcus Chen's windshield as he turned onto Meadowbrook Lane, the pristine asphalt cutting through manicured lawns like a scar through green velvet. The Willowbrook Estates HOA had spent $200,000 on that road last year, money they'd collected from homeowners through special assessments that somehow never appeared in the quarterly reports. Marcus knew because his father, David Chen, had been asking questions about those reports for months before the stroke took him. The blue Ford pickup coughed as Marcus pulled into the circular driveway of the farmhouse that had been in his family for 3 generations. It looked foreign now, surrounded by McMansions and golf course views, but it was home. Or had been, until the letters started arriving. Past due notices, Marcus muttered, pulling a stack of mail from the passenger seat. Lien warnings. Assessment fees. He flipped through them, his jaw tightening with each envelope bearing the Willowbrook HOA letterhead. $40,000 in back dues. For what? The sound of an engine made him look up. A white Mercedes GL Class was sliding up the driveway like a shark through water. Marcus watched Richard Hawthorne emerge from the driver's seat, adjusting his silk tie and smoothing his silver hair. At 55, the HOA president carried himself like a man who'd never been told no, not by his wife, not by the homeowners, and certainly not by some farmer's son who couldn't afford a decent car. Behind him came Patricia Kelsworth, the HOA secretary, clutching a leather portfolio against her chest like armor. Her designer heels clicked against the concrete with military precision. Marcus, Richard's voice carried the kind of false warmth that preceded bad news. So sorry for your loss. Your father was quite the character. Cut the shit, Richard. Marcus stepped out of his truck, the rain starting to pick up. What do you want? Patricia cleared her throat, consulting her portfolio. The board has reached a decision regarding the outstanding assessments on this property. Given the substantial amount owed, we're prepared to offer a settlement. What kind of settlement? Richard smiled, and Marcus felt his stomach drop. We'll wipe the debt clean. $43,800. Gone. In exchange, you deed over the back 40 acres to the HOA. We've had it appraised, perfect spot for luxury townhomes. The rain was coming down harder now, drumming against the metal roof of the old barn behind them. Marcus could see his father's equipment through the open doors, the John Deere combine harvester, the Case IH tractor, the hay baler that had cost more than most people's cars. Machines that had fed 3 counties for 30 years. That land's been in my family since 1952. And now it's prime real estate, Richard said, his smile widening. Think of it as an evolution. Your father understood the value of progress. Eventually. He never would have agreed to this. Actually, Patricia opened her portfolio with a flourish. He did. Right here, David Chen's signature on the agreement. Dated 3 weeks before his passing. He was quite lucid during our meeting. Marcus stared at the document, rain dripping from his hair onto the paper. His father's signature looked right, but something felt wrong. David Chen had been many things: stubborn, proud, occasionally impossible, but he'd never have sold that land. Not to Richard Hawthorne. Not to anyone. This is bullshit. It's binding contract law, Patricia said crisply. The debt stands, Mr. Chen. $43,800. The lien goes into effect Monday. Richard adjusted his cufflinks, gold glinting in the grey afternoon light. Of course, if you can't pay, we'll have to pursue other remedies. Asset seizure. Foreclosure. It's all very unfortunate, but the HOA has a fiduciary duty to its members. Marcus looked past them toward the barn, where $600,000 worth of farming equipment sat collecting dust. His father's Legacy reduced to lot numbers on an auction sheet. You've got 3 days, Richard continued. After that, we file with the county. They'll seize whatever they need to satisfy the debt. Starting with those pretty machines of yours. The rain was a downpour now, turning the driveway into a small river. Patricia hurried back to the Mercedes, her heels splashing through puddles. Richard lingered for a moment, studying Marcus with the satisfaction of a predator who'd cornered his prey. Your father was a good man, he said, raising his voice over the storm. Stubborn as hell, but good. He just didn't understand that times change. Progress happens whether we like it or not. Get off my property. Richard chuckled, sliding into his car. Enjoy it while you can, son. Come Monday, it's all going to be ours anyway. The Mercedes disappeared into the rain, leaving Marcus standing alone in his driveway, water running off him in streams. He looked down at the papers in his hand, the debt notices, the lien warnings, the contract with his father's signature. That felt like a forgery but looked authentic enough to hold up in court. 3 days. Marcus walked to the barn, his boots squelching through mud and gravel. Inside, the equipment stood in neat rows like sleeping giants. The combine harvester alone was worth $200,000. The tractor, another $100,000. The specialized planting equipment his father had bought just last spring, before the first stroke, before the confusion, before Richard Hawthorne started. Circling like a vulture, that was worth another $100,000 easy. He ran his hand along the combine's yellow hull, remembering summer afternoons when his father would let him ride in the cab, watching the wheat disappear into the threshing mechanism like magic. David Chen had been proud of these machines, had saved for years to buy each one. They'll come for you first, Marcus said aloud. Easiest to move, highest value. Richard's probably already got buyers lined up. The rain hammered against the barn roof, but inside it was dry and quiet. Marcus pulled out his phone and scrolled through his contacts until he found the number he wanted. Jake? It's Marcus Chen. Yeah, I know it's been a while. Listen, I need a favor. A big one. No, not money. Equipment. I need to borrow some of your surveillance gear. The military stuff. Yeah, the kind that got you in trouble with the MPs. He paused, listening to his friend's questions, his eyes never leaving the equipment. How much trouble are we talking about? Well, put it this way, remember that asshole HOA president I told you about? The one who's been screwing over my family. Yeah, him. He's about to steal $500,000 in farm equipment, and I want to catch every second of it on camera. No, not for insurance. For something better. Marcus smiled for the first time in weeks, a cold expression that would have made Richard Hawthorne very nervous if he'd been there to see it. Jake, how would you like to help me set a trap that'll make the evening news? The storm raged outside, but Marcus barely heard it. He was too busy planning. 3 days wasn't much time, but it was enough. Richard Hawthorne wanted to steal his father's legacy. Fine. Let him try. But he was going to do it on camera, in front of God and everyone, with enough evidence to put him away for 20 years. The trap was about to be set. And the bait was worth $400,000. Jake Morrison arrived at dawn on Saturday, his black Jeep Wrangler crunching over the gravel driveway like a whispered promise of violence. Marcus watched from the kitchen window as his old army buddy climbed out, stretching muscles that still looked capable of carrying a full combat load through 20 miles of desert. 3 tours in Afghanistan had left Jake with a limp in his left leg and a talent for electronic surveillance that bordered on the supernatural. You look like hell, Jake said, stepping through the kitchen door without knocking. He set a military-grade duffel bag on the scarred oak table where Marcus's father used to sort seed catalogs. Haven't slept much. Marcus poured 2 cups of coffee from the pot he'd started at 4 a.m. Been thinking about angles. Good. Anger makes you stupid. Planning makes you dangerous. Jake unzipped the bag, revealing a nest of cameras, transmitters, and devices Marcus couldn't begin to identify. Tell me exactly what we are dealing with. Marcus spread the HOA documents across the table like evidence in a war crimes trial. Richard Hawthorne, HOA president for 8 years. Patricia Kelsworth, his secretary and apparent co-conspirator. They've been bleeding homeowners dry with fake assessments, inflated contractor bills, and mystery fees that disappear into offshore accounts. You can prove that? Not yet. But Dad was close before the stroke. He had files, bank statements, meeting recordings. Said Richard was running the HOA like his personal ATM machine. Marcus tapped the forged contract. This signature. Dad would never have agreed to sell that land. His handwriting's close, but the pressure's all wrong. He was left-handed after the first stroke. This was signed with his right hand. Jake picked up the document, holding it to the light. Professional. Job. Expensive. Richard's got serious money backing him, or he's been stealing longer than you think. He set it down, his expression grim. What's the endgame here, Marcus? Because if we are talking about framing these assholes for theft, that's one thing. But if you're planning something permanent, nothing permanent. Just justice. Marcus pulled up security footage on his laptop, grainy images from the barn's old motion sensors. They'll come Monday night. Richard's too arrogant to wait, and he's got buyers lined up. I know because I called around yesterday, pretending to be a dealer with equipment to move quick. 3 different brokers mentioned a special client looking for John Deere combines, no questions asked. Inside job. Has to be. Richard knows exactly what's in that barn and what it's worth. Probably had someone appraise it while Dad was in the hospital. Marcus's voice turned bitter. Neighbors probably think they are doing routine HOA business. White Mercedes, clipboard, official-looking papers. Who's going to question the HOA president? Jake pulled a small device from his bag, no bigger than a matchbox. Wireless HD camera, motion-activated, night vision, 30-hour battery life. Range of 2 miles on the transmitter. He set down another device, this one the size of a cell phone. GPS tracker, magnetic mount, real-time location updates. And this, he held up what looked like a hearing aid, is a directional microphone. That can pick up conversations from 300 feet away. Military grade. Better. Commercial grade that I've modified with military applications. Jake's smile was sharp as a blade. The beauty of civilian surveillance tech is that it's admissible in court. No chain of custody issues, no classified equipment restrictions. Everything we record will hold up in front of a judge. They spent the morning positioning cameras throughout the barn, each one hidden with the skill of soldiers who'd spent years avoiding detection. Jake mounted the primary camera inside the combine harvester's cab, angled to capture the entire loading area. Secondary cameras went into the tractor's engine compartment, behind a stack of fertilizer bags, and inside the control panel of the hay baler. Motion sensors here and here, Jake said, placing small devices near the barn doors. The second someone enters, everything starts recording. Audio, video, GPS coordinates, time stamps, the full package. What about outside? That's where it gets interesting. Jake led Marcus to his Jeep, popping the tailgate to reveal a sophisticated computer setup. Mobile command center. We park this half a mile away, monitor everything in real time, and when they start loading your equipment. He grinned. We call Channel 7 News. Marcus felt a surge of anticipation mixed with fear. They'll actually come. Brother, you're handing them a story about corrupt HOA officials stealing a dead veteran's farm equipment. They'll come with bells on. Jake closed the tailgate, his expression turning serious. But once we pull this trigger, there's no going back. These people are going to be destroyed. Careers, reputations, families, everything. You sure you want that on your conscience? Marcus thought about his father's last months, confused and frustrated as bills piled up and lawyers circled like sharks. David Chen had fought in Vietnam, built a successful farm from nothing, and raised a son to believe in hard work and honest dealing. Richard Hawthorne had repaid that legacy by forging documents and stealing equipment while the old man lay dying in a hospital bed. Yeah, Marcus said. I'm sure. The rest of Saturday passed in careful preparation. Marcus called his insurance company to document the equipment's current location and condition. He contacted his lawyer to verify the liens were invalid without proper notification procedures. Most importantly, he reached out to Channel 7's investigative reporter, Sarah Martinez, with a cryptic message about major HOA corruption and a promise of exclusive footage. Sunday evening, Marcus sat in his father's chair on the front porch, watching the sun set over the back 40 acres that Richard wanted to turn into luxury townhomes. The land rolled away in gentle waves, marked by the old fence line his grandfather had built with his own hands. In the distance, he could see lights from the Willowbrook Estates development, where homeowners paid six-figure HOA fees for the privilege of living next to authentic farmland. His phone buzzed. A text from Jake, all systems green. Cameras online, GPS trackers armed, mobile unit in position. Sarah Martinez confirmed for 10 p.m. tomorrow night, she's bringing a full crew. Marcus typed back, any word from your inside source? Patricia Kelsworth made 3 calls to moving companies yesterday. Richard met with 2 guys at the country club who looked like they'd steal candy from babies. It's happening tomorrow night, just like you said. Another text arrived, this one from a number Marcus didn't recognize. Mr. Chen, this is Sarah Martinez from Channel 7. Just wanted to confirm we are still on for tomorrow. My source inside the county office says the lien paperwork is being fast-tracked. Someone wants your property very badly. This could be bigger than we thought. Marcus smiled grimly. Bigger was right. By Tuesday morning, Richard Hawthorne would be the most infamous man in the Tri-County area. The question was whether Marcus would feel vindicated or just empty when it was over. He walked to the barn one last time, running his hands over the equipment that had defined his family's life for 3 decades. Tomorrow night, thieves would come to steal these machines. But they wouldn't just be stealing equipment, they'd be stealing themselves into federal prison. Jake's cameras were invisible in the darkness, but Marcus could feel them watching, waiting. The GPS trackers hummed silently on each piece of equipment, ready to broadcast their locations to satellites 20,000 miles above. In 12 hours, Channel 7 would have the story of the year. Sleep well, Richard, Marcus said aloud, his voice carrying across the empty fields. Tomorrow night, you're going to be famous. He turned off the barn lights and walked back to the house, where he would spend the next 18 hours not sleeping, checking his phone every 10 minutes and wondering if he'd planned the perfect trap or the perfect disaster. But deep down, he already knew the answer. Richard Hawthorne's arrogance would be his downfall, and Marcus Chen would be there to film every second of it. Monday night arrived with a stillness that felt like held breath. Marcus sat in Jake's mobile command center, parked behind a grove of oak trees half a mile from the farm, watching multiple camera feeds on a bank of monitors that would have impressed the Pentagon. The screens showed empty barn interiors bathed in green night vision, motion sensors displaying steady baseline readings, and GPS trackers maintaining perfect signals from each piece of equipment. Channel 7's in position, Jake whispered, though they were alone in the cramped vehicle. He pointed to a monitor showing the access road. Sarah Martinez and her crew are set up at the county line. They can be here in 4 minutes once we give the signal. Marcus checked his watch, 9:47 p.m. Right on schedule. Richard's nothing if not punctual when there's money involved. The radio crackled with Sarah Martinez's voice, command, this is News 7. We have eyes on a white Mercedes and a dark panel van heading your direction. 2 vehicles, 4 occupants visible. Copy that, Jake responded. All cameras are hot. We are recording everything. On monitor 3, headlights swept across the gravel driveway. The Mercedes stopped near the house while the van, a nondescript Ford with no rear windows, pulled directly up to the barn. Marcus felt his pulse quicken as Richard Hawthorne emerged from the passenger seat of the Mercedes, checking his Rolex in the dashboard light. Arrogant bastards actually wearing a suit, Jake muttered. Who steals farm equipment in Omani? Patricia Kelsworth climbed out of the driver's side, carrying her leather portfolio and a clipboard. 2 men emerged from the van, thick-set figures in work clothes who moved with the casual efficiency of professional thieves. The taller one immediately began examining the barn's loading ramp while his partner started up a portable generator. Audio's coming through clear, Jake said, adjusting the gain on their directional microphone. Richard's voice filled the command. Center, tinny but distinct, exactly what I told you. The combine goes first, it's worth the most and easiest to transport. Then the tractor and the specialized equipment. Leave the small stuff for last. What about the GPS? That was Patricia, her voice sharp with anxiety. If this equipment has tracking devices, relax. These are farming machines, not luxury cars. The old man was practically Amish when it came to technology. Richard's laugh was cold as winter rain. Besides, by the time anyone realizes they are gone, we'll have them disassembled and shipped to buyers in 3 different states. Marcus gripped the armrest of his chair. Did you get that? Every word, Jake confirmed, his fingers flying over the keyboard. Recorded, timestamped, and backed up to 3 different servers. These idiots are confessing to conspiracy, theft, and interstate transportation of stolen goods. On the monitors, the 2 hired men had the barn doors open and were examining the combine harvester with the practiced eyes of experienced equipment thieves. The taller one, Marcus, could see a spider web tattoo climbing up his neck, was already connecting a heavy-duty trailer to the back of the van. Professional operation, Jake observed. They've done this before. Richard walked through the barn like he owned it, pointing at different pieces of equipment and consulting a list on his phone. The hay baler goes to Houston. The planting equipment to Dallas. The tractor stays local. I've got a buyer in Millfield who'll take it sight unseen. What about the paperwork? Patricia asked, still clutching her portfolio like a security blanket. All handled. Bills of sale backdated to last month, registration transfers filed with the state, insurance documentation updated. On paper, this equipment was sold legally to satisfy the lien debt. Richard's smile was visible even in the grainy night vision footage. Beautiful thing about being HOA president, nobody questions your authority to collect on association debts. The spider-tattooed man was now inside the combine's cab, hot wiring the ignition with movements that spoke of extensive practice. The engine turned over with a throaty rumble that vibrated through the ground. They are moving the combine, Marcus said unnecessarily. On monitor 1, the massive harvester was creeping forward, its GPS tracker broadcasting location data in real time as it rolled toward the loading ramp. Jake keyed his radio. News 7, this is command. Primary theft in progress. Subjects are loading stolen equipment onto transport vehicles. Recommend you move to secondary position. Copy that, command. We are rolling. ETA 3 minutes. Marcus watched the monitors with fascination and revulsion. The thieves worked with military precision, the spider-tattooed man guiding the combine onto the trailer while his partner secured it with heavy chains. Richard supervised from a safe distance, occasionally checking his phone and issuing orders like a general commanding troops. Tractors next, Richard announced. Patricia, start the paperwork for Phase 2. I want this looking completely legitimate when the county assessor shows up tomorrow. Phase 2. Patricia's voice carried a note of confusion. I thought we were just taking enough to cover the lien amount. Richard's laugh was genuinely amused. Sweet Patricia. We are taking everything. The land, the equipment, the house, all of it. By Wednesday, this property will be owned by the HOA, and by Friday, it'll be sold to Millfield Development for $12 million. 40 acres of prime real estate, ready for luxury construction. Marcus felt the air leave his lungs. This wasn't just theft, it was a complete takeover. Richard had planned to steal everything his family had built over 3 generations. Son of a bitch, Jake breathed. He's not just stealing your equipment. He's stealing your entire life. On the monitors, the thieves had finished loading the combine and were moving toward the tractor. The Case IH fired up on the first try, its diesel engine coughing to life in the night air. Marcus could see his father in that cab, teaching him to shift gears and work the hydraulics, passing down knowledge that stretched back to his grandfather's first farm. News 7, this is command, Jake spoke into the radio. Target vehicles are loaded and preparing to depart. Recommend immediate response. Command, this is News 7. We have eyes on your location. Rolling cameras in 30 seconds. Hope you boys are ready for some television. Richard was climbing back into the Mercedes when the first news van rounded the corner, its headlights sweeping across the barn like searchlights. A second van followed immediately behind, both vehicles moving fast enough to suggest serious urgency. "What the hell?" Richard's voice cut through the radio speakers as he spotted the approaching vehicles. "Patricia, get in the car. Now." But it was too late. The news vans had positioned themselves to block the driveway, and suddenly the quiet farm was blazing with television lights bright enough to illuminate a football stadium. Sarah Martinez emerged from the lead van with a wireless microphone, her camera crew already filming as they approached the loaded trailer. "Richard Hawthorne." Sarah's voice carried the authority of someone used to asking uncomfortable questions. "Sarah Martinez, Channel 7 News. Can you explain why you're removing farm equipment from this property in the middle of the night?" Richard froze like a deer in headlights, literally. The television spots had him pinned against the Mercedes, his face a mask of shock and growing panic. Behind him, the spider-tattooed man was trying to unhook the trailer from the van, but the chains holding the combine were too complex to remove quickly. This is official HOA business," Richard stammered, his usual smooth confidence evaporating under the camera lights. "We are collecting on a legitimate lien. Everything's perfectly legal." "Is it legal to falsify documents?" Sarah held up a manila folder that Marcus recognized as his father's medical records. "Because I have hospital documentation showing that David Chen was physically incapable of signing any contracts 3 weeks before his death. His right hand was paralyzed by stroke damage." Patricia made a sound like a wounded animal. Richard's face went from pale to grey to something approaching green as he realized the scope of what was happening. "Furthermore," Sarah continued, stepping closer with the predatory instinct of an investigative reporter who'd caught her prey, "I have recorded evidence of you discussing the interstate transportation of stolen property and conspiracy to commit real estate fraud. Would you care to comment on camera?" The spider-tattooed man wasn't waiting for comments. He'd abandoned the trailer and was sprinting toward the tree line, leaving his partner to face the music alone. But Jake had anticipated this motion. Sensors hidden in the fence line triggered additional cameras that tracked the fleeing thief with high-definition clarity. "All subjects accounted for," Jake reported into his radio. 2 attempting to flee on foot, 2 trapped at the scene. Sheriff's Department should have enough evidence to file federal charges. In the distance, sirens were beginning to wail, county sheriff's deputies responding to Sarah Martinez's advance call about a theft in progress. Marcus watched on the monitors as Richard Hawthorne's carefully constructed world collapsed in real time, broadcast live to anyone with a television or internet connection. But the best was yet to come. Because as the sheriff's cars rounded the final corner, their red and blue lights painting the farmhouse in patriotic colors, Marcus realized that Richard's greatest humiliation was still 30 seconds away. The man who'd stolen a dying veteran's legacy was about to become the most infamous criminal in Tree County history, and the first sheriff's cruiser slid to a stop just as Richard Hawthorne made the worst decision of his life. Instead of surrendering quietly, he lunged for Patricia's leather portfolio, shouting, "Destroy the evidence. Patricia, burn everything." But Patricia Kelsworth had already made her choice. The HOA secretary who'd spent 8 years enabling Richard's corruption stepped backward, clutching the portfolio against her chest like a shield. "I'm not going to prison for you, Richard." Her voice cracked with hysteria. "I kept copies of everything. The bank transfers, the forged contracts, the shell company accounts, all of it." Sarah Martinez's camera crew captured every word as Patricia threw the portfolio at Richard's feet, papers scattering like autumn leaves across the gravel. Bank statements, contract drafts, and handwritten notes documenting years of fraud spread in a paper trail that led straight to Richard Hawthorne's front door. "You stupid bitch." Richard dove for the papers, but Sheriff Deputy Tom Morrison was faster. The 20-year veteran tackled the HOA president with a precision that spoke of too many late-night domestic calls, driving Richard face-first into the gravel. In the command center, Marcus watched his father's enemy eating dirt while being handcuffed and felt a satisfaction so deep it was almost spiritual. Jake was recording everything, his equipment capturing angles the news cameras couldn't reach. "This is Sheriff Morrison to dispatch," the deputy's voice carried across the chaos. I need additional units, evidence collection team, and FBI notification. We've got interstate theft, fraud conspiracy, and enough paperwork to keep the DA happy through Christmas. Richard struggled against the handcuffs, spitting gravel and blood. You don't understand. This is legitimate HOA business. I have the authority. You have the right to remain silent, Morrison interrupted. I suggest you use it. But Richard Hawthorne had never learned to remain silent. Even with his face pressed against his Mercedes hood, he couldn't stop talking. That equipment belongs to the HOA. The lien is valid. Marcus Chen owes $43,000 in assessments. Sarah Martinez stepped closer with a microphone, her camera operator maintaining perfect focus despite the chaos. Mr. Hawthorne, are you claiming the Willowbrook HOA has the authority to collect liens through equipment theft? It's not theft. It's asset seizure. Perfectly legal debt collection. Patricia let out a sound between a laugh and a sob. Legal. Richard, we've been billing dead people for landscaping services. Mrs. Patterson has been paying assessments for 3 years and she died in 2021. The admission hit like a thunderbolt. Sarah Martinez's eyes lit up with the expression of a prosecutor who'd just heard a full confession. Can you elaborate on that, Mrs. Kelsworth? The ghost accounts, Patricia said, her voice gaining strength as she realized cooperation might save her from prison. Richard created billing accounts for deceased homeowners. Their families kept paying automatically through bank drafts, not knowing their loved ones had passed. We've collected over $200,000 from people who couldn't possibly owe money. Shut up, Patricia. Richard screamed from the hood of his car. Shut your mouth right now. Why should I? So you can buy another boat while I take the fall. Patricia turned fully toward the camera, her mascara running in black streams down her cheeks. He's been running the HOA like a personal bank account for 8 years. Fake contractor bills, inflated maintenance costs, assessment fees that go straight to offshore accounts. The Meadowbrook Lane repaving project. That cost $12,000, not $200,000. Richard pocketed the difference. Deputy Morrison looked up from his arrest report. Are you making an official statement? I'm making a full confession, Patricia said firmly. And I want immunity in exchange for testimony against Richard Hawthorne and everyone else involved in this conspiracy. The spider-tattooed man chose that moment to burst from the tree line, apparently having circled back toward the road. He ran directly into the path of the second sheriff's cruiser, which had been positioned to catch exactly such an escape attempt. The deputy didn't even need to get out of his car, the thief simply bounced off the hood like a bug hitting a windshield. And that, Jake said from the command center, is what we call a clean sweep. Marcus couldn't speak. He watched the monitors. As his father's enemies were loaded into police cars, their theft operation captured in such complete detail that no jury would need more than 5 minutes to convict. But more than that, Patricia's confessions had revealed a corruption scheme that stretched far beyond simple theft. Sarah Martinez was interviewing Deputy Morrison when her producer tapped her shoulder and pointed toward the command center's location. Sarah, we are getting word that there's more to this story. Someone's been recording everything from a mobile surveillance unit. Command, this is News 7, the radio crackled. Can we get an interview with your surveillance team? This story is going national. Jake looked at Marcus. Your call, brother. You can stay anonymous, or you can step into the spotlight and tell your father's story. Marcus thought about David Chen, who'd spent his last months confused and frustrated as lawyers and bureaucrats circled his life's work. His father had been a private man, proud but never boastful, the kind of person who believed action spoke louder than words. Let's go tell the story, Marcus said. They drove the command center to the farm, where Sarah Martinez met them with barely contained excitement. Marcus Chen, I presume. You just handed us the biggest corruption story in county history. This isn't about me, Marcus said as Jake began unloading equipment. This is about my father and every other homeowner Richard Hawthorne has been stealing from for 8 years. The interview took place with the barn in the background, the stolen equipment now evidence in what would become the largest HOA fraud case in state history. Marcus spoke clearly and calmly about his father's confusion in his final months, the suspicious documents, and the decision to set a trap instead of simply calling the police. "Why go to such elaborate lengths?" Sarah asked. "Why not just report the suspected fraud to authorities?" Because Richard Hawthorne spent 8 years building a reputation as an upstanding community leader. His word against a grieving son's accusations wouldn't have been enough. Marcus gestured toward the police cars, where Richard sat handcuffed in the back seat. "But catching him red-handed, on camera, confessing to multiple felonies. That's bulletproof evidence. And the surveillance operation. Military precision applied to civilian justice," Jake interjected, stepping into frame. "Sometimes the system needs help protecting honest people from predators in expensive suits." Sarah turned back to Marcus. "What happens now?" "Now, Richard Hawthorne goes to federal prison for a very long time. The HOA gets audited back to its founding, and every penny he stole gets returned to the families he victimized." Marcus looked directly into the camera. "And my father's equipment stays right here on the farm where it belongs." The interview concluded just as the FBI arrived, 2 black Suburbans full of agents who'd been monitoring the situation from the state capitol. The presence of federal investigators transformed what had started as a local theft into a major white-collar crime story that would dominate news cycles for weeks. Richard Hawthorne, now facing charges that could put him away for 30 years, had finally stopped talking. He sat in the back of the sheriff's cruiser staring straight ahead, his expensive suit torn and his face a mask of stunned disbelief. Patricia Kelsworth was cooperating fully, her confession expanding to include names, dates, and account numbers that painted a picture of systematic fraud stretching back nearly a decade. By morning, the FBI would have enough evidence to indict half the HOA board and 3 local contractors. But the most satisfying moment came when Deputy Morrison approached Marcus with a clipboard. "Mr. Chen, I need you to verify that all your equipment is accounted for and undamaged." Marcus walked through the barn, checking each machine that Richard had planned to steal. The combine harvester, the tractor, the specialized planting equipment his father had saved years to buy, all of it intact, all of it staying exactly where David Chen had left it. "Everything's here," Marcus told the deputy. "Everything's fine." As the police cars drove away with their prisoners and the news crews packed up their equipment, Marcus stood alone in the barn where this had all started. Jake was securing the surveillance equipment and the FBI was photographing evidence, but for a moment the chaos faded into background noise. He could almost hear his father's voice, carried on the night wind that rustled through the wheat fields. "Sometimes, son, the best way to catch a thief is to let him think he's already won." David Chen had been right about that, just as he'd been right about Richard Hawthorne's true character. The old farmer might not have lived to see justice served, but his son had made sure it was served with interest. By 11 p.m., Marcus Chen's trap had become the lead story on 3 television stations, trending topic on social media, and the most watched live stream in Channel 7's history. Richard Hawthorne's downfall was complete, spectacular, and perfectly documented for posterity. But the story wasn't over yet. Because in exactly 12 hours, the real scope of Richard's crimes would be revealed, and Marcus would discover that his father's death hadn't been